Hey guys, many people were interested in my Heartseeker build, and today I want to finally share it with you. And it's already the second time that I'm recording this video since some things have changed recently and I needed to adjust a little bit. So yeah, today I'm gonna share my build. I'm not sure if I'm already too late to the party. There are many Heartseeker guides on YouTube released from different YouTubers and streamers yet, but well, you guys were interested in my version, so I'm gonna share it anyways. And today I also want to focus more on some most frequently asked questions kindness, so everything you need to know and to learn about Heartseeker builds in general. And also my specific build is focused around a Pit 100 clear or speedrunner. So with my build I think you can speed farm tier 100 pits very fast, very easily. And in general I think this is by far one of the most efficient builds for pit farming and the best rogue build for sure. So before season 4 started, I thought that rapid fire rogue would be the #1 build, but it seems that Victimize has some double dipping going on, so a lot of buggy interactions, which lead into about 2 to 3 times more damage output from Victimize than it should do, and this is the reason why this build is so broken. And as always, I'm starting with some gameplay here, so you can already see me clear this tier 100 pit, which is considered as not too easy for most classes. And well, the rogue, in specific this rogue build, can speed farm tier 100s in about 3 minutes. And I will also show you later what gear you need for that. And what you maybe already saw here is that I'm crowd controlling the enemies very quickly in the setup here. And the reason for that, and this was actually a game changer, I'm using the aspect Shared Misery. So before I was using something like Undying or also these dodge aspects where I'm increasing my dodge chance and healing and heal myself if enemies hit me and I dodge the attacks. But after I switched to Shared Misery, this was kind of a game changer for me, because I really like how you can stun and freeze and immobilize enemies within 1 second, so the entire screen will get crowd controlled at once, just because we have such high lucky chance and attack rate. And well, this of course helps you a lot with survivability. Nothing can touch you if everything is frozen and stunned. But also you increase your damage this way in a kind of significant way. So the reason for that is the rogues in general deal more damage to enemies that are CC'd, and especially if they are frozen. So we have something like Frigid Finesse in our passive, as a passive skill in our skill tree. So we are dealing 30 or 60% more damage to frozen enemies if we have some ranks on our amulet. And well, if everything is frozen in a very short period of time, then our Victimize damage also deals more damage to the enemies, and especially with the double dipping going on. So something like the control glyph will benefit from this crowd control spread in a very efficient way. So yeah, for survivability and more damage, I really can suggest you trying out this Shared Misery aspect. This really changed a lot for me in this build and made this tier 100 speed farms very easy, very convenient, and also very fast. So yeah, then also some general gameplay tips that I can give you here. Well, it's always a good idea with this build to keep distance to most enemies, especially elites in the first place. So even though you're untouchable after everything is CC'd, you can die very quickly if you play not too carefully. So just try to keep a safe distance before your Shared Misery aspect procs and freezes everything. But after everything is crowd controlled, you can of course dash into the enemies, go into close range, because you also need to lay down your caltrops. This is very important for the highest amount of damage. And also you want to daze your enemies with a smoke grenade, because this will also enable several damage multipliers. And I'm also playing with the Godslayer crown here, so For speed farming, I really like Godslayer. I will also discuss it with you in a minute. Godslayer versus Shako, the big discussion as always in my builds. But everything together, so the Godslayer crown, caltrops, smoke grenade, the very fast crowd control, this leads into this huge one-shot mechanics here. So you can see every elite pack basically dies within one shot or 1 second. So yeah, this is the reason why. And here you can see sometimes we have this annoying damage reduction elites. And it's always also a good idea to have some sort of map observation. So map observation is key with this build. You need to immediately jump onto this damage reduction elite pack. So for that reason we have Shadow Step or Concealment. So Concealment and Shadow Step are skills which allow us to reposition ourselves very quickly, and this way we can just go to this damage reduction elites and take them out before we kill the rest. These are the basic tips I can give you here. On boss fights, it's always a good idea to lay down caltrops just before the staggering phase begins. So usually if they have 70% of their health, let's say, you can lay down your caltrops and then dash through the boss, so you get more crit chance, crit damage, and also use your Shadow Step for more crit chance. But yeah, the key in boss fights is just laying down your caltrops so they are ready before the staggering phase starts, and then you usually burst the boss down within 1 to 2 stagger, sometimes 3, it depends on the boss, but most situations it's very simple, as you can see here. Okay, so this was the gameplay part. And before I start with the actual guide with items and skills and so on, I'd like to share with you a little graphic here. So as you can see here, in fact only 5.7% of my viewership has subscribed to this channel here. So if you really enjoy my content, and I will make more guides, more videos, especially for the Rogue class this season in the future. So if you really enjoy this Rogue content here, then please leave me a like and subscribe to this channel. This would really help my channel to grow. And yeah, thank you for that, guys. So now back to the guide video here. So first I want to go over the aspects, the most important aspects of this build. So I already have shared with you my new favorite game-changing aspect, which is Shared Misery. So I can really suggest you to try this out. Really helped me a lot with the setup here. Then the most important aspects, as always, on this build are Moonrise on your crossbow, on your bow, two-hander bow, then adaptability on your amulet, because these are just the most important damage aspects for this build. Then we have a Cursed Touch to make enemies vulnerable. We have Retribution and Concussive Strikes for some additional damage multipliers in this build. We have Rapid Band for Rapid Aspect for more attack speed with basic skills. We have Edge Masters as another damage multiplier. And here I'm running Godslayer Crown instead of Shako. Umbers on our chest plate, of course. This is mandatory in order to survive the higher pits, so we get these 3 Dark Shrouds. And I have Frostbitten on my gloves. And now I also want to start some discussion here. So let's start with the gloves. There's also the option of Paingorgers gauntlets instead of legendary gloves. Most other content creators, guide creators are not suggesting playing with Paingorgers, and I also cannot really suggest you playing with them, but in fact they are not as bad as you might think. So especially for speed farming some lower tiers, they can be pretty decent. The problem with Paingorgers are they are not boosting your vulnerable damage, so your victimized damage at all, so you cannot scale your big damage explosions with Paingorgers, unfortunately. But what they do is they, well, simply echo your damage. So if you mark enemies with the caltrops, they are marked with these yellow circles. Then they will, every Heartseeker that hits the first marked enemy will also echo to the other one. So this basically works like a mini version of Victimize. But it does not scale your Victimize, so it's in general it's a bad idea to just run some decent legendary gloves. But I just want to mention that Paingorgers are not too far away from some legendary gloves, so yeah, you can try them out if you really want to in some early pits maybe. Yeah, that's what I can say about them. Then Godslayer Crown versus Shako. So I do not own a Shako yet. I can craft it with my sparks. I have gathered 4 sparks right now. I will also probably do it, but for speed farming, so this is more like a Speedfarmer build as I mentioned, I really like the Godslayer Crown because it just pulls enemies together very quickly and you deal massive, you have a massive burst phase for 3 seconds versus elites that are pulled together. So, and yeah, also versus boss fights sometimes. So for speed farming aspects, I really like Godslayer Crown. You do not really need this 20% damage reduction, as you saw in the video. The tier 100 pits are no problem for me, even without Shako or any additional damage reduction. So I'm even running only 1 defensive aspect here with Umbers. So Shared Misery is also kinda defensive, but also offensive, as I mentioned before. So we have not problems to survive at all. That's why I really like Godslayer Crown, but if you want to push higher pits, so if you want to have a challenge in the game and want to push as high as possible, so tier 110 to 120 maybe, then you need the Shako, because you need the damage reduction by that time, and also Shako will deal on average more damage during the boss fight, so Shako increases your damage by 25%, because the 4 ranks of Heartseeker increase your Heartseeker damage by 10%, and this leads into 25% total damage increase for this build, while Godslayer only deals about 15% on average, because we have such a long time, so we have only 3 seconds uptime and then 12 seconds downtime of this ability here of the Godslayer. So yeah, Shako is better versus pit bosses and higher tier pits in general. But yeah, Shako and Godslayer is better for speed farming, or at least very decent. Okay, so Paingorgers, Shako, Godslayer. What else? Here you saw I was playing with Cursed Touch, so this aspect is very important in order to make enemies vulnerable. So after I hit them, even with my caltrops, they also have a lucky chance. I have a chance to mark them as Vampiric Touched, Cursed Touch, whatever, and then they're vulnerable. But if you can find a decent ring with some chance to make enemies vulnerable as well, so I think this one, I had greater effects on vulnerable damage and greater effects on a chance to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. So something like this ring is also very good, and if you can find one, then you should replace a Cursed Touch, and then you can play instead something like Inner Calm or Aspect of Elements. So something like here, Aspect of Elements or Inner Calm, because these are additional damage multipliers with some conditions to them, but they are also decent, and especially during the boss fights they will help you to kill the boss faster. But as you maybe saw here, I unfortunately bricked this item, so I rolled cutthroat damage instead of vulnerable damage. This is very sad because this is a really godly ring, but well, what can you do? So for now I'm not using it. I'm too big of a perfectionist, if I don't know how you say in English, so I cannot run cutthroat damage on my ring. That's not possible for me. Okay, so yeah, you could replace a Cursed Touch with another ring, and then you have basically the perfect setup for this build here. So I can just quickly hover over the gear last time. So yeah, these are the aspects. Then now I want to talk about the best offensive affixes in this build. So you might wonder, what are the best affix rolls that I can get on my gloves and rings and amulets, let's say? So you have attack speed, you have critical strike chance, you have vulnerable damage, you have dexterity, you have lucky chance, you have basically 5 different offensive stats, and at some point you might wonder which is the best combination of them. So the best combination, I put it already down in my planner as always, so you can find my Mobalytics planner in the description and in the comment section. And there, everything, like every aspect on the gloves and on the rings and the amulet is sorted by its priority. So you can just quickly go to my planner and then you will see the priority affixes already listed. But for all who are curious to listen here, I will explain you now. So the number one priority offensive aspect is attack speed. So attack speed, actually I can show you a different graphic first. So first, why attack speed? This is also the reason why we are playing with a bow instead of a crossbow. So with this setup, with this build, you want to have as high as attack speed as possible. And the reason for that is you have many advantages if you attack fast. So first of all, you want to spread your shared misery very quickly. So you want the enemies to become frozen and stunned as quick as possible. So for that reason, a higher attack speed will proc more, more of that CC stuff. And luck hits in general are very important with this build, so we want to proc our Victimize. Victimize deals the most damage in this build, so if we attack very fast, then we can proc more luck hit chance. And also we have healing, because we are playing with Siphoning Strikes, so the more we attack, the faster we heal up. So yeah, we just have many advantages for attacking fast, and that's why we want to reach the fastest frame cast break point. I will show you that now, possible with this build. So this is one update I made to the build, or one recent discovery of mine. So I'm not exactly sure who shared this here. I guess some guys from Mipi, Wudijo, Maxtroll, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly. But here we have this this calculator now, so we can determine the breakpoints. So each skill in Diablo 4, each skill has a casting animation, which is based on frames. So 1 second has like 60 frames in total, and then your skill, if it has less frames, then you will have a faster casting animation. So you want to reach a certain attack speed gap or attack speed threshold, which leads you to the next lower frame rate. And with this build we want to achieve 13 frames, because 13 frames means that we attack, I think, 4.6 times per second. So 4.6 Heartseeker attacks per second is our goal, and this is what we can reach in the perfect setup here. And in order to reach this here, this 13 frames, here you can see what you need what you need to do in order to reach it. So we need to have 7.5 attack speed on our Paragon, we need to have the Moonrise aspect, which we do, we have gloves and rings, we have Elixir of Advantage, which I can highly recommend, and we're also playing with Heartseeker and Rapid aspect. So this is just, I wanted to show you this Google Sheet. I can also link it down in the description if you want to calculate your own frame casting animation, your attack speed breakpoints. Then yeah, I will link it down in the description. But I also have made my own graphic actually. So here you can see, in order to reach this 4.6 attacks per second with Heartseeker, you need to have this setup here. You need 2 rings, so on both of your rings you want to have a greater affix roll with attack speed. Then both your rings will give you at least 17.5% attack speed if they have a greater affix on them. And then you want to have your gloves, but on your gloves you don't need to have a greater affix, but instead you can also have a regular one, but with a decent roll. So actually you want to reach at least 88% attack speed, but because these values also have some arrow variance, let's say about 1 to 2%, to be really safe you need to have about 90% attack speed from the first attack speed cap. So in other words, you need 2 rings with a greater affix roll on attack speed, and then you need gloves with at least 12% attack speed, but to be safe 30 the max roll would be better. But I think 12%, 11.5 to 12% is enough to reach this attack speed cap. So maybe it's a little bit difficult, complicated, but if you reach that threshold, what you will achieve is this 4.6 Heartseeker attacks per second, and this is how you maximize your damage in the first place with this build. So attack speed is very crucial, very key. Then after attack speed, you want critical strike chance. So critical strike chance is very good in this build because we have some double dipping going on with Victimize. So especially our legendary node, we have this Deadly Ambush legendary node, which increases our damage, critical strike damage to enemies affected by trap skills. And also apparently this node is double dipping with Victimize, so it procs 2 times. It procs first for the damage calculation of Victimize and then also for the Victimize explosion itself. So this makes it very effective and efficient to stack critical strike chance in this setup. So for that reason we want to reach as nearly 100% critical strike chance as possible, and we actually have many bonus critical strike chance bonuses in this build. So we have Paragon and Stats, which gives us some amount. We have Heartseeker, which gives us 15% versus bosses. We have Concussive, gives us 12%, Caltrops 10%. Inner Sight, with our specialization, we are also getting 25% for a few seconds. So it's not very difficult to stack up critical strike chance, but yeah, you just need to know that it's also very important, and for that reason I can recommend you to have gloves with a greater affix on critical strike chance, so then you will get additional 15.6%, and on one ring it's enough to have a decent crit roll, so here you do not need a greater affix. So then you will reach this about 100%, and yeah, like I mentioned, everything is in the planner. Here I'm just explaining the math a little bit behind it. So attack speed in first place, then second critical strike chance. Your third priority in the setup is vulnerable damage. So of course we scale our Victimize in the first place with vulnerable damage. So yeah, this is your third priority, so you want vulnerable damage as on many gear slots as possible. So on your gloves, or actually on your gloves you want something different, I will say in a minute, sorry, but on your rings you want always vulnerable damage as a greater affix if possible. So yeah, this is very important. And after vulnerable damage, the fourth priority is lucky hit chance. And lucky hit chance is something you want to have on your gloves instead of vulnerable damage, actually. But the reason for that is on gloves you have a higher amount of lucky hit chance possible, while on rings you have, I think, only 8.7%, while on gloves you would have something like 11.7. And then with a greater affix it goes up to 15.6. So on your gloves you want lucky hit chance, but for rings it's not really worth it, and instead you should go for vulnerable damage. And the last important stat is dexterity. So dexterity is nothing you really want to have on your rings, amulets or gloves, but you can have some decent rolls on your boots or pants, let's say. So pants and boots with greater affix on dexterity will also boost your damage by about 6, maybe 7%. Depends on your total dexterity. But yeah, these are your priorities: attack speed, critical strike chance, vulnerable damage, lucky hit chance on your gloves, and then dexterity. This is basically the order of offensive stats. Then I want to quickly mention and talk about resistances. So the way how we cap out resistances in this build, either you have 2 resistance rolls on defensive gear, and the best slots for that are your boots and your pants. But if you really want to be a hardcore min-maxer in the endgame, what you can do is you can find a ring with poison resistance and cold resistance. Because together with our Paragon board later, if you have a ring with poison and cold resistance, you will not need to invest any further resistances in your other gear, like your boots or your pants, and then you will also cap out your resistances very perfectly. So you will have exactly 0%, you will be 0% away from your maximum resistance. But it's very difficult, obviously, to find rings with poison and cold resistance and very decent rolls, so it's just something for min-maxing in the endgame, but I wanted to mention it because it's also in my endgame planner. So you understand why it's important to have this poison and cold resistance rolls. Right now I don't have a cold ring. Yeah. I think that's it for the gear part. Now we can quickly go over the skills. So of course you want to have as many ranks as possible in Heartseeker. Here I'm healing with Stiffening Strikes. I'm not playing with Undying, as you saw. I'm playing with Shared Misery. Here I like to put 2 points into trick attacks because we are also benefiting from Retribution. So knockdown enemies also increase our damage. That's why I like to have at least 2 points here, so they are knocked down for 1 second. Concealment, very good for repositioning. You could replace Concealment theoretically with something else, but actually nothing comes into my mind that is better. So I really like Concealment here. Yeah, then Subverting Darkshot for movement speed, Frigid Finesse, Haste for more movement speed. So movement speed, by the way, we also reach 200% movement speed. We do not need to invest in anything to stutter step. If we have some decent boots with decent movement speed rolls, then our Dark Shroud, Subverting Dark Shroud and Haste and Moonrise aspect is enough to reach 200% movement speed. And here you can see right now I have 508%, or over 2000% vulnerable damage bonus increase. I'm not sure if this tooltip is correct. Actually, the damage formula is a little bit different, it seems. But yeah, something about this numbers is what you should aim in the end game. And in this can even get a little bit higher later. But yeah, it is how it is. And now let's go with the Paragon quickly. So here I have this Ranger glyph in my starting board, very good for damage reduction. Then we go into this Larian's Instinct board. Here we have this resistance nodes, which are very important in order to cap out resistances. Here I'm having my chip glyph, and this nimble node is very important in order to reach this 13 frames breakpoint for our attack speed, as I showed you before. Here we take poison resistance. Then we go into exploit weakness with control glyph. Here we also want to take many of these nodes, they're very helpful for our build. And then we go into no witness. Here, as always, I really like this trick with, or in this case it's not a trick, but I really like to boost my maximum damage node here. So we get 18% maximum damage with Pride glyph, so Pride also very good for increasing your damage. And then the fourth glyph board is this cheap shot board with ambush. So also here this damage reduction from slowed enemies is very good. If we would run a Shako instead, we would have some more all stats. And then with some instances, we could even go to this 530 strength threshold, and this would give us additional 6% damage reduction to slowed enemies. So this is something you can keep in mind if you want to push for higher pit tiers. So it's possible to reach this 530 strength if you really want it, and then you have some more damage reduction. And the last board is this Deadly Ambush board with exploit glyph. So that the ambush is double dipping with Victimize, as I mentioned, so it's a very, very crucial, important node in this build. And also here you want to have some poison resistance. So yeah, this is the Paragon board. It's quite similar to some other boards from Meepy or Vodijo. The reason for that is just there's not too many different things you can try here. This is pretty straightforward, I would say. But yeah, this is one of the best Paragon boards you can do, I think, for this build. And yeah, this was Heartseeker. I hope I didn't forget anything important. I hope you enjoyed this little guide here. If you have some further questions, you can ask me in the comments. I will, as always, try to answer as many questions as I can. And yeah, don't forget to like my video and subscribe to this channel. I would really appreciate it, and I'd say I see you in the next guys' videos, and yeah, have a nice day and bye bye.